CA, welcome to the Z Marketing Podcast. Thanks for being with us today.
Sure, Zev. Thanks for having me. Been looking forward to this.
Yeah, me as well. Tell us a little bit for those who don't know you, your 30-second commercial, your elevator pitch. Who are you? What do you do?
Sure. Yeah. So CA Green, I have a small production company called Behind the Beard Media, and I really try to focus on cinematic videos that help businesses and services get actual results. So what's a cinematic video? It's a video that looks really good, but also has a result tied to it. Just like a movie has to be super professional, but has to make money. That's how I approach the videos that I work on.
Excellent. And so take us a little bit behind the beard. Love that name. What's your background with video? Did you go to film school? How did you get into doing video production?
Yeah, for sure. So, kind of what I consider like a typical film kid story. I just grew up loving movies and TV, and I used to go with my father to the movies like every other weekend. And as I started learning more about the mechanics about making movies, that's when I really became more infatuated. Not only is the story so incredible, but there's hundreds of people working on these things. It's like the brainchild of a director or a producer, and everything down to the colors and sounds and wardrobe and like everything is done on purpose. So I really, kind of love that as a control freak myself, but also just the intentionality behind it. And so I pursued, wanting to make films from a very young age, 15 years old, started working on a set of a friend, and then made a couple short films that won a couple festivals back in the day. And in college,
Wow.
yeah, so it's a sock puppet short film that won an award. So if anyone wants to watch, it's pretty funny. And then in college, I tried to get into the film school at Florida State, but I had already been making a video production company on the side. So my take is that they already saw me doing stuff, so it didn't really need film school, but that might just be for my ego. Um, so, started playing with the cameras and figuring out like shooting and editing. And, my strengths really turned into producing, writing, and directing. So really, project managing and organizing everything, having the conversations with the clients, and really understanding the deeper story behind what we were doing, not so much the technical aspects. And then after that, I moved to New York and was really trying to become a producer on major motion pictures and TV. So I worked as a locations assistant for, big shows on NBC and ABC and some Netflix shows and a couple movies, and did that for about 2 years. And
Were
then,
you at Silver Cup Studios or
yeah,
one?
yeah, I actually was at Silver Cup for a couple shows. Yeah,
Awesome. That's they have an iconic sign, like you could see it in Long Island City, I believe,
exactly.
from the water. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I did feel like I was, partially getting some of my dream at that point. And then, that's towards the beginning of 2016 is when, I decided to become religious, which is a whole nother story for another time. It's a crazy, wacky story. I write about it, I've posted about it, happy to chat about it, but not at this time. So I
As
took
an
like four.
Orthodox Jew.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's where the beard became much longer. I'd already had, a beard, but it was like trimmed and always kept nice. And this was like, oh, I don't ever have to shave again. Like, this is great.
Now you just let
Uh,
it grow. Let it grow, let
yeah,
it go. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I took 4 years off from making anything in production. I barely wrote. I think the only video I produced was for my like engagement party. Me and my wife, like we got some footage together and made something. And then I got back into production at the start of 2020, which is like the worst possible time to get started again. But dip my toe in with doing some motion design and animation videos. And then over the last couple of years, my network's obviously in the Jewish community, so I've done a lot of Jewish videos for nonprofits, and they really range from like comedy pieces to dramatic pieces, and I'm really just always looking for like what's the best possible way to tell this story. So
I
now
loved your video, by the way. You did one for a local bagel shop, like a small bagel place, and that was really great.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually did that for a trade, which was my business model in college. I would just trade businesses for videos. So for this bagel place, the kosher bagel spot, so I made a video for them and I didn't pay for bagels for quite some
So
time.
you got like a lifetime supply of bagels in return for video. That's a fair deal, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. I'd love to know more a little bit about your process and your approach. By the way, just on a personal note, I never got so into the mechanics of film, but anytime when I was I mean, I used to want to go to film school. Maybe I should have, but I like producing this show. That's about as technical as I get, but I always enjoyed like whenever I was in school or camp, if they ever had like some, electives or activities, if there was ever anything to do with making video or making like anything with video, I always did that. Always went for that. Um, love messing around with like camcorders and making skits and things like that. So very cool. Now you were like as you describe it, like living your dream. You're in the city, working on shows. What made you decide, hey, you know what? I'd rather like do my own thing, be an entrepreneur, make commercials, things like that. And was there a transition? Was that a difficult transition, or take us a little bit behind that?
Sure. Yeah. So, like I said, the decision to stop working at that level really came in conjunction with becoming a Hasidic Jew. Like, I kind of really delved deep into that new personality of what I was becoming. And so I couldn't balance, I was working 70, 80 hours a week, from 12 to 15 hours a day. And when I started learning about the rules of Shabbat, there was one show I was working on where I would have a call time, which, the time I have to show up to set would be on Monday at 10 a.m. And then every day it gets pushed back like further into the day. So Friday, my call time would be 4 p.m. So I wasn't finishing work until what I now know as, Shabbat morning or Saturday
Hmm.
morning. So it, I couldn't see a way to actually hold both of those at the same time. And that's when I took the step back. And then in 2020, when I wanted to get back into things, I did reach out to a few location managers that I had been working with before. And I had one guy who I was pretty close with, and he just flat out said, "Dude, I don't know why you'd want to get back into this. I'm on 3 antidepressants. I'm getting yelled at because a hurricane is coming and pushing our schedule off. You sound like you're doing okay." And so when he said that, I kind of realized like there were a lot of things working in the industry at that level that just, quite frankly, sucked. You're kind of getting yelled at a lot. It's a lot of hierarchy. Like you can't speak to certain people. You're very disposable unless you're like a top tier actor or director. And the environment itself, I didn't feel really jived with the Jewish one that I wanted to have. So the decision to have a little bit more autonomy for my schedule, thank God I've got three little kids now, and I want to be more around for them, and I can control my schedule. I don't have to work, 12 to 15 hours. I can try to do a 10-hour shoot day, and it's not happening every single day. And I just have other responsibilities and values that just make more sense to work on my own thing. And that, again, it's not limited to Jewish businesses and companies and messages, but I am a little bit, choosy when it comes to like values that I want to be able to work with. And it just made sense, like I said, to do my own thing given all those circumstances.
So, beautiful. That's really great. Thank you for summarizing that. So basically, that's why entrepreneurship, I'm a huge believer in it. I think for uh, a lot of people are drawn to it for the freedom and flexibility that it affords you. You have the freedom to pick your own projects. You can choose to work on things that match your values or that you're, excited about, and or products you believe in. A lot of people, women who are maybe stay-at-home moms, they can balance with the children and working on their own project. You don't have to commute every day. I mean, a lot of people work remotely now, but when you can do things on your own terms for whatever reason, whether it's to balance raising a family, or other interests or pursuits, you're able to do that. Obviously, when you are, kind of captain of your own ship. So that makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. And I've been an extra, by the way, on some shows. I know exactly what you're talking about, that disposable, that environment. People have, first of all, half the people are sitting around most of the day doing nothing because of the unions. So they're just yeah, we're just sitting here, like, whatever, we're getting paid. And then a lot of it is like, yeah, just getting people getting, I don't know, screamed at, or, whatever. You can't leave. earlier than a certain time, even if you're not doing
Yeah.
anything. It's crazy. So good for you forging your own path, and it sounds like you've found a more of a work-life balance or a doing things on your own terms that works for you. So that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
I think
Um,
just to add one more thing there, because you brought it up. So my wife is actually pretty active in her own career. You know, she finished her PhD in Hasidic feminism, kind of like what does it mean to be a Jewish woman
wow.
within like through the lens of Jewish mysticism. So she's public speaking, she's working on publishing not only her dissertation, which is, 300 pages, but also two other book projects she wants to do. She's coaching. So it does afford me, the flexibility that if she has something come up, I can be, Mr. Mom and like take the kids.
Yeah.
Well, I take the kids to school now, but maybe pick them up and just be, my day could end at 3 o'clock that day instead of 5 o'clock if need be. So that's another consideration for our family personally.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Me too. My wife was working at a regular desk office job, commuting into the city from Queens every day, like, 4 or 5 days a week. And first few months after maternity leave, yeah, it was like I was, as you say, Mr. Mom, raising, with the kids. Some of the people who are really hardcore fans of this podcast might remember my son making a few unscheduled appearances on the show during that time because I was working, and with him all day. So yeah, totally, it's great. And then, like for example, when I used to work at a job commuting, it was such a pain. You have to race home, and then all the stores, if you need dry cleaning or whatever, or groceries, are closed. And it's like to be able to say, hey, you know what? I could take a break between Zoom meetings or whatever, and go, do some laundry, or that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your approach to video? In your opinion, what makes a good promo video, or what are some of the important key ingredients that need to be in your video for it to drive you a desired outcome?
Sure, yeah. So there's three basic stages to making a video, which people are probably familiar with, but there's pre-production, production, and post-production. It's pretty obvious what each of those are. Pre is what happens before, production is what's happening when you're actually shooting, and post is everything that happens after. So I like to structure how I approach projects with a pretty heavy emphasis on the pre-production side, which, in the sales world, it could be called a discovery call, workshops, anything where I can just find out more information about the person, about the business, about what they're looking to do. You really want to have the end in mind before you start the project. A lot of people come to me and say, I just need someone to come shoot this thing. And I kind of need them to step back a little bit and say, well, what's the purpose of what you're trying to do? Like, how can we best set ourselves up for success from the outset? So, really, the process is much heavier on the
Mhm.
pre-production and discovery side. Probably, 40% of the stuff happens in that pre-production, whether it's hiring the right people, getting the right messaging, figuring out all the logistics beforehand. So that way, when you actually go to the production, which again, probably 10% of what you're doing, all the work has already been done. And then you're just going to show up and film the actual thing, make sure people are comfortable if it's live interviews or actors are ready, like all the logistics there. And then the remaining 50% is going to be in post, but it's not going to be cleaning up. It's going to be checking out the footage. Did we accomplish what we wanted to do? And, do we need to iterate? And then putting it out into the world and seeing what actually happens. A mix of what I try to offer clients is not just the 1 2 to 3 minute video, but also like social media videos. And let's cut down that 2 to 3 minute video and make different reels and stories and stuff that you can use for your content. Or while we're there shooting that 2 to 3 minute brand film, let's just turn the camera around and film something else real quick. Let's use our phones. Let me bring my little Osmo Pocket 3, which is a small little handheld thing, and get some more content. So that way it's not really about deliverables, but it's about value. And then what can you use this for the future? Because there's different levels to the funnel. So I really try to
Yeah.
understand all of that beforehand.
Great. Okay, let's get into that because one other thing I also want to say, because a lot of people sounds so obvious, but they make this video and they forget like the most important part at the end, a good call to action. What do you want the person
Right.
doing after this video? But the other thing you're saying about keeping this theme of the end in mind from the beginning, you're talking about distribution and how context. They say that like content is king, but context is, God or whatever. Like it's basically context is what I think the old days of people just making video that was almost like a small film or something, an independent film, or more of a creative thing that was suited to TV, or that medium, are over. That now they always have to think about, when I make this video, I have to assume it might be in the context of someone watching a TV commercial, but it might also be on a YouTube pre-roll. It might also be as an Instagram or a Facebook post and someone scrolling at 1,000 miles an hour. It might be as a story, a quick story on Instagram, or as a reel or a TikTok. There's so many different mediums. And I know that personally, years ago, maybe now I think that the industry's changed, but years ago, I remember having a conflict with a video guy. One of my clients hired this video guy, very good, but like we were doing an Instagram ad campaign, okay, and the video had like the logo for like a solid 2, 3 seconds that felt like forever, with intro music and then a fadeaway. And I'm like, listen, you can't do that for Instagram. People are scrolling super fast. The first 3 seconds you need to grab. This isn't like the old days, like, hi, I'm Peter something and I'm here from some. No, no, no. Like, get to the point right away, you know. And I remember, and also the other thing that was an interesting, that we were kind of at loggerheads. This was about 7, 8 years ago, was about landscape versus uh
Vertical.
yeah, like square. And all the there was like a study that had just come out that was showing that on Facebook and Instagram that square was doing better. It was just like, that was just a fact. There's nothing emotional about it. And he was in love with landscape because I think that was like the older, more cinematic. And I was like, well, listen, I know that you might love the art and the art's important, don't get me wrong, but I want clicks, I want views, I want purchases. That's what the client wants. So tell me a little bit, how do you, when you're making a video, how do you factor in all these different ways the video could be used and distributed?
For sure. And I can appreciate everything that you're saying on both ends of the spectrum. I come from, the movie world where for sure you want it on the biggest screen possible, landscape, like the widest, anamorphic lens and everything. But I think what is changing is that these things are not going away in terms of what's needed for social media, but I don't think that you can't also have the landscape video. You just have to be more intentional with where it's going to actually end up. Like if I'm going to make a website video for somebody's about us, then that for sure can be landscape and that can be 5 minutes and whatever. But that video should not also be the video that's going to be the YouTube pre-roll or the Instagram story. You have to, this again, I think really echoes what I was saying about having the end in mind is if we are just going to go make a video, that particular video without all the information of where it's going to live might not be set up for success. I'll give you an example. I worked on a video last year that for the client, he got interviewed on the world's largest Jewish podcast network. He 5x'd his investment with me just from that video. The video was 2.5 minutes long. Now, when he released it, he tried putting it on TikTok. That is not a great place for a 2.5 minute video. So he didn't tell me before we started that that was his intention. We just made the video thinking it was for awareness. It was going to be on a website. He would maybe share it with some people, stuff like that. It wasn't until after that we kind of had to scramble and then make some clips for him that could be used for that purpose. But ultimately, that 2.5 minute video is what got him those results. So it's really important now, I tell people to just think about where this is going to go and then try to just give them all of the options. There's a really funny video called vertical video syndrome, and it's like these puppets and they're making fun of like, hey, listen, our eyes are horizontal, not vertical, so like stop making vertical videos. And
Mhm.
it's really funny, but obviously hasn't aged well in terms of content. It's just
Yeah.
not the reality of what we're doing, which is totally fine. It just has to be really, it has to be part of the conversation before you even start rolling the camera. And just a little another side note to that, I'm also pursuing narrative projects. I'm still, I just wrote a short film the other day that I'm going to try to produce this year and try to make, and maybe a feature and a TV show and all these things. So same
Nice.
idea that those are going to be designed for a bigger screen, but I still need to make promo things for those pieces that need to be designed for Instagram, designed for LinkedIn, designed for Facebook and fit
Right, and
into,
designed for this, that's
yeah.
that ultimately most people that's what they're consuming at this
Oh,
time with this recording, most of their media. And I
right.
think that having the distribution, in mind, like we were saying before, it's all about context. There's nothing wrong with landscape, a good or long form versus short form. That's a whole big debate as well. And it's like actually depending on where the audience you're showing it to and when long form can kill. But in certain instances, you're maybe reaching an audience that's not familiar with you. You have only a few seconds to grab their attention. Maybe they're on their phone, they're on TikTok. You're going to need something shorter. And that's why taking a long form video that works in one meeting and breaking it down and adapting it to the different nuances of different platforms will help you be more successful. Sorry, I know you were
Yeah.
going to say something.
No, it's fine. I was trying to listen at the same time. You get a thought in your head and you're like, oh, but I wrote it down. So on top of knowing where it's going to go for the particular social media, I think it's also important to know where the video fits in the kind of inverted marketing pyramid of the company. So if you're going to make a piece that is designed to really with somebody, that might not be the same type of video that would just be in the awareness like side of it. So the inverted pyramid is like awareness, which is like the biggest one, and then educational, which is a little bit smaller, and then conversion, which is even smaller. So the same type of video might not work for all three of those. So you really have to know, like, is this the type of video, like going back to the 2.5 minute one, that's not necessarily a conversion video. That's going to be a much bigger thing. Like, let's see if this works and let's see if this lands with people. And it's going to be strategically. It's going to I'm sorry. I'm human. I made a mistake. It's the opposite. That is going to be the conversion video because it's going to be somebody who actually really cares about listening to that story as opposed to the shorter TikTok videos that would be in that bigger part of the pyramid, which is about awareness and volume and quantity as opposed to a little bit more time for someone to
The
really
top of the
trust your
fun, it's like the
business.
top line funnel. What do you call that? Like that first impression that
Yeah,
grab the attention. Whereas the other
exactly.
one, you have my attention. Now I want to go deeper, and maybe I'm in
Exactly.
consideration. Now I might want to make a
This
purchase.
is exactly it.
You have right behind you, I think I see it. I can tell by the colors. Isn't that Gary Vee's book about social
Uh,
media? I
yeah,
mean,
day trading attention. Yeah.
he day trading. He's very big on the whole contextualized content and adapting it to the medium and the nuances and being empathetic to the user and the mindset where they are and when they're viewing your content, where they are and what they're doing at that moment. So that's all a big part of my business religion as well. So um, when you're, creating this, and the same, by the way, it's not just video. Even as recently as like last year, it doesn't happen as often anymore, but especially these smaller businesses that might be not super digital or marketing savvy, they'll sometimes say, put this magazine article on as a post on Instagram. And it's like, no one can read that. It doesn't, or the image is way too big and glossy and just
Right.
it doesn't feel, as they say, native to the platform. It
Right.
looks like you just took a magazine and put it on Instagram. It doesn't look like you created content that is suited to the room you're in right now, and it's awkward. So I
Yeah.
think having if you're today, we all have to wear different. If you are a creative in marketing, whether you're a video person, a graphic designer, a copywriter, you also have to have a hat on for like social media or just for the context of understanding, hey, they're going to see this on an email, or hey, they're going to see this on a website. Hey, they're going to see this on a TikTok. You have to also be like a marketing strategist, looking at the bigger picture and understanding the audience, not just the pure creative, maybe more so today than in years past. Where can people, maybe, is there any interesting projects you're working on right now? any new offers, and where can people find you?
Sure, yeah. So an interesting project that I'm working on now, I just mentioned, is actually this narrative film. This short, it's a Western horror. It's a lot of fun. It's only about 9.5 pages. I'm going to use it as a proof of concept. So I think
Cool.
if anybody is interested in getting involved with funding film projects, I wouldn't necessarily say to fund a short film, but the plan is to, flesh it out, make a feature, and I'm really going the independent producer route for narrative projects. So I think if that interests anybody, that would be really cool. In terms of offers, I have a ton of offers, usually very tailored to each person that I speak with. But one really easy offer that I think a lot of people could potentially use is I'm offering people a kind of remote interview like this and using the content that they come up with and then creating a bunch of short social clips that they can use for their own posted content. I know some people don't feel they feel like they can't do it or they feel like it's too time consuming, but this would just be an hour talking to somebody and then taking all of that information and creating a bunch of different shorts that could be used across and just really establish them as thought leaders and authorities in their field. So that's something that I'm running. And I'm assuming right now, given the cost that I have, that would be around 1,500 a month with a 3 month minimum. But I think anybody who listens to this podcast, happy to, take off $500 just for them reaching out and say they heard it here. And then how can people get a hold of me? So I'm the most active on LinkedIn, as we spoke about before the podcast going. So it's just, C.A.Green. That's my name on LinkedIn. And my website is behindthebeardmedia.com. So you can also go there and send me a message. And, my email is cagreen@behindthebeardmedia.com. So happy to chat with anybody too. Just if they're struggling with something or need direction or pointers, I'm also happy to be a resource there.
Perfect. I'll link all that up in the show notes. And by the way, speaking of context, I switched from gallery or whatever it was to speaker view because I've heard that on YouTube, in the context, people like seeing like one speaker. It performs better than when they're like a strip, like a landscape side by
Yeah,
side. Because that landscape works in other mediums, other contexts. But and I'll just say this also, that anyone, if you work with CA Green, he's a very talented video guy. And when you make a video, it's a great investment in yourself and your business. And I think that what's really important is you want to get it out there. You don't want to just make it and have it sit on the shelf, have it sit on your website, have it sit on a YouTube channel that with two subscribers. You want to get it out. You want to
yeah,
adapt it, cut it up as he can do, and he understands the different mediums. And then have someone like me and my team, help you make money with it on, Facebook ads or Instagram ads or wherever
definitely.
you're going to be promoting and have that video work for you. So, CA, thank you so much for being here. I'll put all that in the chat, and thanks for sharing your wisdom with my listeners.
Thank you, Zeb. Be blessed.
Take care.